What if the most important journey you take isn't to a destination, but inward? Welcome to Wellness with Purpose.
If you have a singular person that is devoted, has a genuine change of heart, that opens up their mind, that person, then you have an impact on their family. Their family has an impact on their community. Please be open. Please be humble, because you've got some shit you got to learn still, buddy, although you think you're on top right now. Amnesia is, I don't remember my name. I'm confused. I don't know where I am. And amnesis is, I remember everything. I remember my first kiss at 6th grade, the music I loved, my grandmother's cooking, the song that used to move my soul. Why don't I do this anymore? That's painting that I like. Why don't I visit my friend that I care of so much anymore? I forgot all about that. Like, it literally opens your mind to the full lattice of your entire life, because often we're operating on what's called the default mode, which is our egoic mind is what's efficient, what's effective, what did I learn yesterday? It's going to help me with my tasks today. So, and how am I going to survive? But I've worked with, YPO CEOs and founders and visionaries, as well as, day-to-day people that still have a really powerful impact on their communities and families. So I found that to be very nourishing as well, that transition there.
And today's guest walked away from one of the most successful career in the life event history and chose to start over, not because he had to, but because a single ceremony showed him who he was actually meant to be. He's a psychedelic ceremonial facilitator, an ICF certified leadership coach, a master ceremonial trained in indigenous lineages spanning from the Havasupai to Lakota Sioux. He is the founder of The Spark, a profound 12-phase journey that helps people discover the truth, their soul's true purpose. And he has just opened the door to something really beautiful, Communita Sanctuary, an 11-acre retreat center that is nestled into the mountains of North Carolina, that he co-founded with his wife, Renee. Please welcome Ehren Cruz.
Thank you so much, Cornell. It's an absolute honor to be here as a part of the podcast today.
Oh, you said that so humbly, and I appreciate it. So, okay, just let's start right here, because I have to ask. You have built enormous in the festival world. 11 years, hundreds and thousands of people event that generated, 100 millions? That's not a hobby. That's a life. And then it stopped. COVID comes in and it just takes it. So what was actually going on inside you during that time?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So I have always found that festival environments create an opportunity for people to really experience the most powerful expressions of music, art, and culture. It transcends the divides. It opens people's eyes and hearts to just the depth of radical creativity that people can really bring forward. So for me, these were much more than just, fun weekends out with the family. These were transformative containers where you can step in and be exposed to, usually at the events I hosted, 10 to 15 different countries, different forms of ceremony and workshops and art and painting and also the beautiful, rich environment. And then you layer in the music, you layer in the community. And so people can genuinely open up to a much deeper part of their own truth and nature in those environments. So I was very devoted to it. I was hosting upwards of 3 festivals a year. So one in the fall, one in the spring, and then a big summertime offering. And as much as I loved it, and it was a true vocation of passion, and it also brought in some great deal of profit, the intensity of that particular lifestyle of constantly speaking with producers and agents and managers and curating these in full experiential weekends and site operations and hospitality and backline, it became just quite overwhelming and intense. I have 3 young girls as well. They're now 10, 9, and 6. And at the time they were younger, and I'm on the phone. They're hanging all over my body. I'm sending out my 7,000th email. And inevitably, it felt like my own quality of life, feeling a sense of wholeness and balance, was starting to deteriorate. And the real zest and zeal that I held for these events experiences was just starting to fragment, or just this sense of burnout that I had on my daily lifestyle. So inevitably, when COVID was coming, I was already quite fatigued. I was already speaking with my wife about, hey, I'm looking for a reorientation here, but I'm so in it. I don't know even who I am outside of being a producer. I've been so developed in this world for so long. I'm not quite sure how to even pivot. And then COVID made the choice for me. We were going on the 50th festival for this one particular organization I worked on. It was probably my favorite lineup coming up. And then it was gone overnight. It's over. And I was like, okay, well, let me call every artist and get them to book 6 months later, because clearly this isn't going to go that long, right? And it did. And they canceled it the second time. And then I knew it was time to step away from that particular world. In one way, it was a very incredibly disruptive and a despairing state of affairs, because something I loved and cherished so much, not only just the ability to do that, but even the question of gathering a community. What does this mean for us? What does it mean to be so isolated, as opposed to my lifestyle that's been so based upon, coming together and cross-pollinating everything we love to grow. And so when that occurred, it was really hard blow. But then I really recognized, and we could go into this as well if we desire, that although I love the epicenter of community as an offering in festivals, it really is about the service of helping people transform, evolve, and grow. And you don't always need to have a very big container from that. If you have a singular person that is devoted, that has a genuine change of heart, that opens up their mind, that person, then you have an impact on their family. Their family has an impact on their community, their colleagues, their clients. And you work with one person that has a life transformational change, you work with 1,000 through that person. So that really helped to reorient me into a vehicle of a different form of service. But it was hard stepping away from that whole world of big fanfare and the celebrations of festivals, for sure.
It's not just losing revenue, but yeah, you are feeling like you are losing your identity. It's like your whole world, and it just stops.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think a lot of people who is listening right now have had a version of that. But that moment where the things you built your whole world life around, it suddenly isn't there anymore, of course. And I really appreciate you being honest about that.
Yes.
So
Yes.
at some point in your chapter, you had an experience that changed everything. Tell me about that psilocybin ceremony in 2020. What was this intention you brought into it, and what actually happened?
Absolutely. So, psilocybin fungi, they are the nervous system of our planet. Fungus is the nervous system of our planet. You look around us here, every plant has a mycophilic relationship, or at least 99%, that helps the plants receive nutrients. Fungus breaks down carbon, radioactive waste, plastics. It fertilizes the soil. We have our gut biome that breaks down foods and helps to bring healthy gut flora throughout the body. It really is quite a profound kingdom. There's more fungi, 7 times more fungi than every plant and animal combined in this world. It's the oldest kingdom. So people often forget that it is its own intelligence in many different ways. And so I, for a long period of my life, was working with psilocybin personally as a sacrament, with intentional prayer, often through indigenous different ceremonial ritual protocols, and just learning how to listen to the song of this particular medicine. It holds a certain tone, a certain type of frequency in the body that was really enriching my life, because although I wasn't serving it at the time, it was my insights in psychedelics that were helping me to see all the different dynamic cultures and how they connect together, and how this music and art really braids in beautiful ways on the festival circuit. So it was already informing my life in big ways. But in 2020, I had a medicine ceremony with psilocybin, and I was at a very low point. Again, my career was in shambles, with my organization folded, and everything that I loved was going. And the medicine came in an experience that really emerged through me. And it was this deep sense of, I have really cared with intention for the medicine. I felt this real sense of almost a symbiotic relationship within which I had used it thoughtfully and intentionally, and it had provided me intentionally with care. And so it revealed to me this insight and this awareness into, do you wish to serve in this medicine? Do you feel called to come forward and be able to utilize this medicine to support others in healing, in growth, and transformation? And my first monkey mind immediately came on board, like, how would I do that? Illegal. And who would even, come to support this? And what does that even look like? And then it just completely quieted that energy down and was like, that's not the question. Do you wish to contribute and support to well-being utilizing the medicine? And in my heart, I said, absolutely. I can think of no one thing, maybe perhaps my relationship to my wife and my children, that has brought me so much genuine peace, wisdom, and care into my life. It would be an honor to serve. And I felt this beautiful serenity that came over my entire being. I had muscles tight that I didn't even know existed. It was just this entire peaceful collapse in that space, and a yes, just a yes that came through my body. The next day I come up and I start looking online, looking on LinkedIn. It's like, oh, look at that. Third Wave Psychedelic Institute has the first non-therapeutic licensure training course for psychedelic coaching facilitation. Awesome. Okay. Looked into that 6 months long course with a practicum. Cool. I then was like, okay, well, I need to be able to support people through trauma, support people through different ethical considerations of care. So I've got my professional coaching certification through ICF, a few other trauma-informed certifications. And really everything started kind of clicking and coming together, in which that through the vehicle of using psychedelics with intentionality and care, because that's a really important piece to this, is that the onset was, okay, so I treat it with reverence and as a ceremonial sacrament. That's great and beautiful. But how do you then support somebody from assessing whether they're ready for the medicine? What is their history? What medications they might be on? What mental health diagnoses we need to consider? Making sure I'm a right cultural match, bringing them through an honest arc of preparation. These are things you want to do with your body, your mind, your spirit, your intentions, whether it's movement, diet, nutrition, rest, meditation, contemplation. So really taking this really full arc to bring them through a guided experience then where I can serve and facilitate them, that can support the healing that they genuinely need. Because in the ceremony, it's really important. I'm not healing them. They have their body's own healing intelligence. I'm providing a safe ecosystem, an empowered ecosystem, and upon which that can happen with care. And so that's really my role as a steward of the space, more so. And so I started getting into service and did a lot of different, again, study and preparation. And then since then, I've supported over 250 people in a psychedelic experience, immersive experience.
What I love about the way you are describing it, you are so into it. Wow, that's really amazing. So I know that why you chose this path. And since then, you have been providing a kind of a healing to people. So
Yes.
do you think that it was always there in you, or you just finally stopped running? Okay, just let me reframe. So
Yes.
what was the moment when did you know that, okay, this is what you are actually here to do? Like, was there a clear moment?
There was somewhat of a moment, I have to say, with that experience I share with you being that. But what I felt is so from a spiritual standpoint, I feel like everybody comes into this life with a particular soul mission orientation. This is my own purview or perspective here, but I feel like we have certain skills, affinities, things that we have, ways of expressing ourselves, ways of our art and our own capacity that are unique, and it's difficult sometimes to distill down what those things are, just because of how much intensity is around. No, you need to become an accountant and you need to, do this. This is the job that will get you abundance and give you the lifestyle you're looking for. But I feel that there are subtle gifts that all of us do hold that are innate in some ways. And then there's also, so that's kind of part of it. That's kind of soul purpose orientation. And then the other side of that, there is this sense of drive or will or natural passion that one can feel when they really tune into something that they love. Then they feel this deep sense of, I can just do this and I'm not working. I'm in service. I'm certainly, there's effort involved. There's a commitment here, but I'm not feeling like I'm taxed and burning myself out or, doing it for the man. And so I feel like this was one of those things where my soul arc, my genuine gifts of being able to support people in a certain way, paired with my passion, really synergized. And since I chose this particular path, there's never really been a day that I have felt like I need to slog through this one. And man, I got a consult coming up. Like, I meet people and they're deep and open and sincere, vulnerable. I never, I don't live in the surface with anybody. I'm talking about their depth of emotions, what they truly believe, where they're hoping to go with their aspirations in their life, and how can I support them in getting there. And that's something that's really, it hits a whole different note for me. It feels something that's really nourishing to my soul when I can really be there for people in that way and then have a skill set that can support that. So it was kind of a build in some ways, but there's definitely this deep sense of I'm in a devotional path more than I am in a vocation or even a job. This is a something that I believe in on a deeper level, and I think that really converts into the level of work that I can provide for people and how much care I can always pinpoint in day to day.
What I am hearing is like, of course, a lot of people who end up doing the most meaningful work had to lose something first to find it. And what
Absolutely.
you are describing it here, like you just didn't pivot at the careers. I think you answered a calling.
Absolutely. And that's a great path. People have to often be willing to sacrifice what they should be doing to really find that courage to step into what they're called into. And it's not an easy path. It is something I have a lot of respect for, and why people also don't right away step in. We're accountable for families. The world keeps spinning. So it is always a risk, but I think that that's what we're kind of here to do.
I love that. So you founded the Spark. Now I understand why did you name it as Spark? Like in 2021, in the middle of everything like shifting. So what was those early days look like? Like you went from managing 5,000 performers just to sitting one to one with someone in a deeply sacred space. So that's a whole different kind of a stage. So was it very hard, that transition that nobody really talks about?
Yeah, I think one of the most challenging things for me was that my position didn't really exist. In fact, even when I tell people I'm a harm reduction ceremonial facilitator, they still don't really understand what that is. And to kind of clarify, the reason why I'm able to work with what is an illicit substance is that, one, I don't provide compound. So people have to take their own personal assessment of how they acquire the compound, and then I then provide a harm reduction framework. So my assessment, my preparation, my mentorship, my facilitation, all this is done through that particular orientation of supporting you in your decision to move into this health journey. As of now, and things are moving along with FDA and DEA approvals, it's only a matter of time. But as of now, that's the way I can kind of fit into this gray area of being of service in this particular work. So for me, I had to compose something that really didn't exist. So I really went into some significant depth. What does the legal landscape look like? How can I support with integrity and ethics in a field that doesn't even have a board oversight or anything like that? So really learning from a lot of different professionals across the country that were able to provide me with some structures and frameworks for how to start to facilitate was really important. And then it also was a bit of, I don't want to say trial and error, but how do I compose an arc? And that's what the spark is. The spark is the inspiration. The arc is the path, that you actually have to go through in that work there. So how do I provide this in a way that feels full and composite and of deep value, while also knowing I'm going to have to iterate. I'm going to have to mold and shape this as I grow. Again, because no one's saying, hey, this is the method. This is how it's done. So, early days were, I would say, a bit more Wild West. I did very best to always meet people with as much integrity and care as I possibly can. But sooner right away, I realized, oh boy, there are certain conditions that I really can't work out. And with certain medications that, oh yeah, that is a contraindicator. It doesn't really work well with this medicine. And so my process has been of one of, I'm a lifelong learner. I'm devoted to always taking the very best research insight that's coming into the field and helping to enhance it with my own work. And I always err on the side of caution. I'd rather make sure that I have a container that is really well suited for people. And if I don't, I have colleagues, I have other people that I can reference them out to support them. But the one thing about this particular field that's exciting, though, that I think is also because there's no playbook, it really adds a lot of power to nuance in how to do this work. So I add a lot of music and art therapy to my work, and natural and nature therapy to my work. So bringing people into the woods for a hike, composing beautiful orchestrated musical pieces for them as they're having their experience, working together with fragrance, working together with tone and sound. So the palette is vast. So I'm able to add a lot of my own personal expression into that. And as I shared, it's big difference between, on the microphone with 10,000 people out in front of me to one-on-ones. But I've worked with, YPO CEOs and founders and visionaries, as well as, day-to-day people that still have a really powerful impact on their communities and families. So I found that to be very nourishing as well, that transition there.
What you were just describing, mate, and what really strikes me is that you were essentially starting over, but you were carrying like a 70 years of wisdom into it. So it wasn't like starting really from a zero. It was starting from somewhere you're very deep, and you are incorporating every piece of an experience into this new. Oh my God, that is amazing. Yeah,
Thank you.
I love this. So, okay, just I want to get into the like, actual work now, because I think people will really need it to hear this. So let's talk about the spark itself, because
Yes.
it's not just I just take you on a journey and let's see what happens. There is a 12-phase process behind this. So walk me through what actually means. What are the people walking into when they step into your work, and what are they actually walking out as?
That's a great question. Yeah. So how I really composed my architecture behind my program is really looking at more of a hero's journey framework. This is the mythologian Joseph Campbell's great framework of really stepping out into one's genuine sense of purpose as really a rite of passage. The idea or the conception behind medicine work is that it can be you have revelation of novel discoveries, or you have insight and visionary insight of things that you've never seen before or heard before. But quite often, I consider it more of a journey of remembrance. Who were you before society said you should do this, and your parents said you need to do that, and you're conditioned by your schools, and you're conditioned by the culture around you, and you're pressured by your peers to show up a certain way? Who rests at the heart of you behind all of that? Your funky way you laugh, the interesting way you dance, your humor, your genuine love and care, your wonder, your innocence for the world. What happened to those pieces of you along the journey? Where did you lose those? Where did they splinter off due to the trauma and the wounds and the pain? And so my whole process is about rediscovery. You're stepping back into the world and reclaiming your origin self, your essential nature. And in order to do that, you have to be courageous. You have to face, okay, these are the habits that I have formed that are not healthy for me. These are the coping strategies. I smoke like this. I have this addiction to this. I have this neurotic tendency to do this. And not saying, okay, that's just what is, but actually being honest. What can you do to embrace the change there? What habits can you try to reorient in your life? What support structures do you need around you to make that a reality? Do you need therapeutic support, men's or women's group support? Do you want to be a part of some kind of affinity group that can help to nurture that for you? So what we really do first is do a 360 analysis looking at your body habits and patterns. What are you doing day to day to take care of yourself or not take care? What is your mind consuming? Are you Facebooking or social media all the time and news? Is it a lot of static, a lot of tension, drama? Or are you trying to build skills and teach and learning things and affinities, things that you enjoy, and have different ways of expressing yourself through, writing or art? Where does your spirit lie? What nurtures your soul? Where do you feel connected to the sacred? What is that expressed like in your life? Do you have community that you're a part of? Are you in environment and nature? Do you take advantage of the beauty around you to nurture yourself and regenerate? So we kind of look at the ecosystem, and then we build a very thoughtful arc along that journey path. These are the things I'm going to be accountable for, the changes I'm going to make in my body, the relationships I'm going to shift with people that I care about. I'm going to cut away these toxic things that are no longer serving me. And I'm most importantly going to go the deep dive inside the self and say, what are these wounded patterns that are driving my life? The anger, the reactivity, the grief, why are they there? And what do I need to do to reconcile them, to digest or metabolize them? And that then can done through plant medicine sequences to support that. So you get to a certain level of your growth, you get some good momentum, you get some clear line of sight as to what you're becoming. Okay, then let's take a peek behind the curtain. Let's get into the medicine then, dive in deep, see what's inside of you, see what wisdom is there to be gleaned, and some awareness you could bring to that. And then we'll work to integrate that in, bring that into an embodiment plan, develop a new arc or pathway toward further visions, further things you'd like to experience or express, and then do another final journey on that to kind of affirm and cement that channel into your life and really choose to adopt that level of awareness as your dominant purview. All of us are going to still have some ego. All of us are going to have some things going on for sure. It's the human experience. But if you are dominantly in your heart-centered awareness in a place where you are accepting and embracing of life, saying yes to the frontier of life with courage, with love and compassion for those around you, then that is really just such a powerful way to live. It's a sovereign way to live. It's a way that's emanatory to everybody you care about. So that's kind of how we compose that. We really look at this process of creating healthy habits, patterns, and developing skills, doing the deep work of healing those, deep shadow places that need to be healed, and then empowering that next chapter with a new state of awareness.
I just wanted to make sure that the audience really hear this, that this is not a weekend workshop. This is a whole journey, a whole process. And there is a structure, there is a care, and there is someone who is actually walking besides you the entire time. Wow.
Yes.
That's really different. What most people, what when the most people, when they hear the psychedelic experience, this is deeply held.
Yes.
So one thing also strikes me that your background, I've been going through your profile, your website, and how you hold both of these worlds, like ancient indigenous ceremony and then modern coaching framework. There was harm reduction, science. How are you bridging those two? Because for the lot of people, those it's like two total opposites.
That's a great question, and I feel like that has been the perception for a long period of time, is that they are polarized positions. You have one of the deep ancient wisdom and culture, the deep knowledge, deep time of psychedelics. And then you have the therapeutic side of the psychedelic industry that's looking at the neuroscience and looking at the behavioral sciences and seeing how these compounds can help with establishing baseline wellness. But I don't think they're diametrically opposed. I think one of the beautiful things on all spectrums of science is that it is becoming more human-centric in its design. People are, even in the therapeutic landscape, recognizing the need for holistic care and well-being. It's not just, mood stabilization with medications of the mind or talk therapy and regression as to your lifestyle. It's, where is your nutrition? Where is your movement? How is your rest coming in? What is your contemplative practice? Do you meditate? Do you reflect? Do you journal? Do you think deeply about what's important to you? These things are really coming into a contemporary fold, as they've always been held in ancient culture and indigenous culture as the most important dynamics in one's life. That which you believe, that which you are attuned to in your life is that which you express and that which you do. You are what you think in many different ways. So I like the idea also that people have different channels of influence that speak their language. So for some that are very spiritually bent, I will talk about ceremony and initiation and the power of ritual and the thousands of years this medicine has been used in different traditions and cultures to bring about awakening and to bring about self-actualization. But for others, they want to understand the neurochemistry. How does this medicine impact the serotonin receptors in the gut and move into the 5-HT2A receptor and then have access to the thalamus and create different sensory, communications throughout the brain? And how does that then produce BDNF compound in the mind to help to accelerate growth in the neurons, and how to perceive things differently? Like for some, that's safety. They want to hear about what that is for them and how that can materialize into lasting change in their brain through neurogenesis and having new cognitive thoughts and capacities inside of them. So part of what my role has been is to become very adept and knowledgeable in these different streams so that
Mhm.
people step into this work, they can understand, oh, okay, well, I don't really jive with the ceremonial language, but yeah, when you're talking about the neurochemistry and the transitions that happen in my brain and the longevity of that and how that can be
Mhm.
supported, that feels great for me. That feels aligned. So that's, I think, what's really important there. And, there's been, what is Roland Griffiths, who was the great neuroscientist who brought psilocybin back into the mainstream back in 2006. He's the first person from Johns Hopkins University after 50-year moratorium that brought the medicine back online. And I saw him in 2024 in a Denver conference, and he ended up becoming a master meditator. I mean, this is a man with 100 research articles in one of the most prestigious colleges, but a deep meditator. He started learning from the indigenous wisdom, and he's almost 80 years old at the time. And he's up there speaking, and he's like, it's such a miracle that we are aware. And we might perceive the science as the quantum, and the indigenous might perceive that as Wakantanka, a great spirit. But we're all talking about the same thing. We're talking about our connection to the universe around us. We're talking about we live in a symbiotic world where we're interdependent with all life. And we might use the language of science, they might use the language of spirit, but we're actually one family. And I thought it was so powerful when he framed it. And I think that's more the direction people are going right now.
And I love that framing so much because I think a lot of people who comes in with like either this is too spiritual for me or this is too clinical for me. But
Right.
what you are describing, it's a container that holds both. Because I know that people are wondering that, so that's why I asked you the question. So
Absolutely. It's a great question. Yeah, it's very important to
so
continue to face that.
yeah. And I want to like paint a picture for the people who are listening and someone who might be sitting with some heavy right now and wondering if this is what kind of a work is even for them. So where does the journey actually look like? Where is someone when they first reach out to you and where they tend to land after going through your work?
Absolutely. So, this medicine is very adaptable. That's one of the beautiful things about psilocybin is shown in the research that, PTSD, depression, anxiety, OCD, addiction tendencies, all of these things are wire-based challenges, often from trauma. We would have a wound in childhood, a certain type of incident occurs, or sometimes it's death by 1,000 needles. A lot of little t traumas happen, and it affects our quality of life, our way of being, our nervous systems become overwhelmed. And again, there's only so much genuine capacity for talk therapy and for medications. They all hold their space, and there's nothing against them. I visit a therapist myself still. I found it to be very, very helpful and supportive. But
Mhm.
sometimes there are some deeper things, especially I don't know where these particular challenges are from. I don't know why I feel this stuckness, this heaviness. I also feel like there's so much more for me in this world, but my eyes cannot perceive beyond the veil of kind of what's immediately in front of me or what I'm exposed to. So that's where sometimes this type of medicine gets down into the deeper layers of the subconscious, deeper into the deep memory of the self. Sometimes people experience, many times they do, it's called anamnesis. And that's the opposite of amnesia. Amnesia is, I don't remember my name. I'm confused. I don't know where I am. Anamnesis is, I remember everything. I remember my first kiss at sixth grade, the music I loved, my grandmother's cooking, the song that used to move my soul. Why don't I do this anymore? This painting that I like. Why don't I visit my friend that I care of so much anymore? I forgot all that. Like, it literally opens your mind to the full lattice of your entire life. Because often we're operating on what's called the default mode, which is our egoic mind is what's efficient, what's effective, what did I learn yesterday? It's going to help me with my tasks today. And how am I going to survive through this all? It's kind of that mode. But you don't think about, wait, I have these loves and these, deep desires to explore and experience. And it really opens your mind and heart to that, as well as awareness to what's stopping me from doing that. This belief, this fear, this particular wound, these things can really stop the body or the mind from being able to be empowered to say yes to life. And I think that that's where this medicine really brings you. Will it always be a revelation that'll change your life forever, off the journey? It happens. But most of the time, I say what it provides you is with a North Star. you get a real clear sense of this is my work. This is my way that I'm going to go. This is what's holding me back. And then that's where the integration is so important. You have those insights that come forward in the journey, but then it's what do you do with that afterward? How do you choose to change your life? How do you adopt new healthy patterns? And what are you going to do to make sure that that has sustainability? And that's where I come in as a coach, as a guide to help help be accountable, help them continue on that pathway there with, as you said, presence and care along the path. But that's where I think that could really make the shift, is to get that clear line of sight in their life.
That's so beautiful. It's just like I just want to sit in for that for a second because that's really powerful.
Thank you.
So I'm sure you hear all kinds of misconceptions when people found out what you do. So what's the biggest misconceptions people have about this psychedelic facilitations or about this a deep soul work in general?
Yeah, well, a couple things. Some people think that is the panacea. I'm going to go into a journey. It's going to take care of all of my problems, and I'm going to come out and I'm good. And that's just not how things work. Again, it can help as a catalyst. It's a beautiful catalyst, powerful catalyst. It'll help to ignite the work, empower the work, clarify the work, and maybe help to some of the metabolizing of that work. There's definitely some movement that can really happen in there. But that's a big thing that often comes up, is that that it's just a one and done journey experience, and life is the journey. This is just a powerful moment in between. And, another thing is it's uncomfortable. Most things that are worthwhile, whether you're, at the gym trying to get into good shape, or you're changing your diet, or you're, doing some of this deeper medicine work, or, Jungian shadow work, whatever it is, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable because change is uncomfortable. The body likes its comfort homeostasis. It thinks it does. It thinks it wants to be static and safe. But often that's not really what it's being called for. So this type of medicine, there's often big tears and big psychosomatic injury, flaring up in the shoulder here, and I'm feeling moved by this there, and oh my gosh, I'm afraid of this here. But as you're going through the experience, and you realize I have the courage to see this through, and there's something more important than my comfort, and that's my personal freedom. That's my personal ability to change and grow. And so whether it's the journey itself, or some of the work pre, or some of the work afterward, I just let people know as this isn't all about high fives and big smiles, rainbows. We'll try to get there. It's about showing up the best you can, as earnest as you can, and being willing to face some very real things and allow that process to take the time it needs. Sometimes someone's wound could take a week. Sometimes you'll be in it for six months, a year. I have certain things I've worked with, wow, 2025 was the year of that, getting through that. So that's the big thing. But, it's an uncomfortable process. It's an intense process. There's beauty, absolutely. And it's not a one and done. It's a catalyst, and often best framed with other wellness practices, nutrition, meditation, different types of ceremony or ritual, health and fitness. All these things are friends, very complementary. They really form a whole lifestyle. And so that's another thing that I often encourage as well, is that the more that you're able to open yourself up to different resources and support, and take this very earnestly, then the more that this particular experience can help to catalyze so much more in your life as well.
Yeah. Because there is so much noise around this topic and not enough real or a grounded voice, like you are saying, here is what is actually is. So thank you for saying it out loud. Now I would like to go behind a curtain a little bit, because you're just not a practitioner, you're also running a whole business. And I think and then that part of story is really important. So this is Park, Communitas Sanctuary, your coaching, education work, the retreat production. There are a lot of moving parts. So what's the biggest challenges you are navigating right now as a business owner and not as a facilitator?
Yeah, absolutely. The ability to reach the right audiences that are in need of service is always, I feel, many solopreneurs challenge in the journey. This is my business as well as my vocation and practice. But I would say 70% is operational, in many different ways. I am continuously writing to stay relevant in blogs and things like that, LinkedIn. I am often trying to find different resources, such as this wonderful podcast, to be able to share my work and message with new audiences. I'm having to field all the different touch points, from the email communications being prompt and courteous to establishing consultations and making sure that they are very efficient and able to approach people and ask the right questions. Assessments, developing the right assessments and tools that they can take, so I could see what lanes they fall into for my work, and then the protocols and guiding them along that process. And following up for testimonials and following up to see if I can connect for other people within different networks, and having to stay abreast again of the research and all the things going on, so that I know that my approach and the insights that I'm providing are accurate to where the current things are. So I think that for me, and the sanctuary is a whole different space. It's a retreat center in our land, and all the caretaking that goes into that. I mean, I'm out there this weekend 8 hours just tending gardens, for this space. It's beautiful, but it requires a lot of care. So I do feel that what is the biggest challenge, though, is finding ways to increase the network capacity to reach the right people that then I'm working with. Because my goal, I love working with all forms of life, but I find that when I work with people that have a certain level of already devotion to their own path, experience, support structure around them, they have their own drive, there's really some powerful ripples of impact that can come from that. So reaching those types of audience that are very wellness conscious, creative conscious, is very important to me. So it's staying attuned to all those things and allowing the fuel of what I get from service to then fuel the not so fun components of everything else that I do to manage and operate the business in there.
Yeah, you are right. Because nobody, I mean, that's the thing about the business, that nobody can prepare you. You can be extraordinaries at the work you are doing it by yourself. But then you look up and realizes the business side is like a whole full-time job that nobody is going to train you for.
Absolutely.
So, and I also hear that you are looking out to reach more people. But how are you thinking about reaching more people? Because the people who need that, what you are offering, do you think that they are even know how to look for, or maybe where to look for, or what does going this look like for them?
Yeah, that's where I feel like right now we are in an age where, with certain consistency of messaging, algorithmically, it's only a matter of time before you really start to blossom into new fields of audience. Whether that is, I am going to post every single day insight on LinkedIn to ensure that my message is going to be coming across and people start to recognize my brand, my energy, what I'm putting forward thoughtfully, or your YouTube, and I'm going to record these particular thoughts as a thought leader. Or many people are turning to, okay, I want to try to get into as many podcasts or TEDx or speeches that I can land, because every time I make this powerful connection, such as with yourself, that's a new community, that's a new network, that's a new opportunity to strengthen and build. But for what I'm at right now is I've worked for 5 years really honing my craft. I call it my journeyman phase. So I was, deeply focused on care, supporting the structure, learning the nuance there, listening to the artistry of journeys, and really stepping in. And now I feel I've gotten to a place where I'm ready to train the next generation of facilitators, I'm hoping to, down the line, which feels really right for me. So I'm developing curriculum and things for that, to start to develop trainings for that as a next generation. And I feel like I'm ready to speak in this type of way on the way to approach this work with ethics, with care, with a respect for science and sacred, and really start to kind of bring this out in a way that is inclusive and accessible to different walks of life. So that's why, I'm so excited to come on this wellness podcast today, Wellness and Purpose podcast today, and why I want to continue doing this as well for different communities, so that they could kind of debunk this myth. Oh, psychedelics is just for music festivals, or it's only for a clinical setting and it's got to look like this. Is like, no, there's a vast world of where this is, what this can be for you. And so with further connection and education, I think then can help to broaden its impact on the world.
Wow, I can imagine, and that takes us such a emotional energy, just showing up and explaining yourself over and over.
For sure.
For not just you 400. So just in a brief, walk me just what a real week look like for you, like what you are personally spending most of your time, and where do you feel that it's keep on piling up more than it should be?
Well, I think where I spend a lot of time, it's kind of divided into, say my Tuesdays and Thursdays. That's where I'm doing my consultations, doing my coaching on those particular days and mentorship programs. So that's a lot of my front to back touch points, one-on-ones with people, supporting them on their journey, preparations, integration schedules. I do my journey work, my facilitations on Wednesdays and or Fridays, depending on the week. I used to do 2 is max per week. I try to do 4 a month, because it's intense, powerful work. I used to do more than that, and that is not the recipe for me. I need to have a good balance there. Even if it does hit, financially, that's just a reality of what that is. But I think it's important for me to be in that rhythm. So Wednesdays or Fridays there. I'm also in the process of writing a book. So I have my creative days on Monday, working that on Fridays as well, if I'm not doing journey work there. And then there's other things like tending the household and the rhythm of that. I would say my biggest challenge is creating and sustaining a lot of content, because content, meaning, publishing the articles, doing the videos, that's just purely time consuming. Not that I have a skill set in there and I have a lot of passion for it, but having the hours literally in the day to do that feels to be some of my most difficult kind of time, curating those components there, and establishing pipelines, ways to have a consistent inflow of potential clientele. I've worked with some concierge services in the past, but it's not easy to again pinpoint and have a consistent flow of clients. So those are some channels or things that I am usually looking for either some support on or some different, always tinkering with my own schedule there. Yep, with 3 little ladies and a wife and family, like doing it all. I mean, there's just not enough hours in the day, but I'm doing my best.
Oh my God. What I'm hearing is a facilitator, a director, a content creator, somewhere in there, a husband and a dad of 3 girls.
Somewhere in there.
So that is a lot for one human to hold. So, okay, now I have to ask. So, if none of this got easier, the logistic, the reach, the weight of running all of it, what is it actually going to cost? Not just to the business, but to the mission. I mean, for the people who never finds you because the path to you isn't clear.
Yeah. Well, of course, the one cast is impact. This is a role of impact. So my goal is to have as much contact with people that are able to benefit from my work and services as possible. Also, the very real reality is that if I'm always stretched into doing a lot of things proficiently, it's difficult to master and really enhance certain particular channels of deep interest. And so that's a very real reality for me is, having the ability, capacity, time to dedicate and devote myself to designing this curriculum and lesson plan modules for the facilitation training. That's been something that's been cooking for a while now. And reason being, because I can't just say, all right, time out all the other things. I need to tend to this, that perhaps there might have to be a time where I'm going to do that. But that's kind of one of those dynamics, is that there just doesn't seem to be a genuine capacity to enhance some of these vehicles that have a lot of potential and of their own nature, because I'm having to just sustain them all to the best of my capacity.
Yeah. that one lands. Wow.
Mhm.
So, okay, I'm just shifting a gear just a little because I always love this part of the conversations. So, how are you thinking about AI and technology in work? Because you operate in a very that is very deeply human, and it's very deeply relational and deeply rooted in a ceremony and a presence. So, does AI feel a threat to that, or a tool, or something in between?
I would say something in between, you know. AI I use as a very powerful iteration tool and also a synthesis tool, for lack of a better term. You know, I feel one thing that I stayed away from is allowing AI to generate my communication. And I do that very specifically because yes, it takes a lot more time to communicate. However, I feel like, you know, having the flavor and nuance and uniqueness of one's own tone approach to how they articulate themselves is one of the most human things about us. And it's not that AI can't generate really insightful and wise content. It is that you lose those very textures that make you in that process. And so that's one of the things I don't utilize as much it for. But I do use AI. Sometimes for example, will come across a particular condition that someone's working with and they're saying, okay, I have cyclothymic or bipolar disorder, and this is my fate. I need mood stabilizers and I need this. And then I go, okay, well, AI, can you cross reference what cyclothymic disorder might look like in indigenous cultures, in Vedic medicine, in Buddhist traditions and philosophies, and in ancient civilizations? And how would they may have approached this differently than people are approaching this in the West? And then all of a sudden it starts to spit out, yes, for this particular insight, nutritional differentials for Ayurvedic medicine say you want to probably lean into these supplements here and eat this type of approach. And Qigong and breath work is very, very powerful for emotional regulation. So you want to make those considerations there. And so often I use AI as a tool to widen the scope as to what I'm actually looking like if I feels like I'm a very refined particular lens that's very constrictive and I want to widen that out. Or, you know, sometimes I'm developing a coursework here and I'm like, oh, what are the parallels to shadow work in these different traditions? And then it'll kind of go through and say, oh, okay, this is how it's looked at through this lens and landscape. This is how it's looked at for this lens and landscape. So I feel that AI is a very powerful tool in being able to see and cross-comprehensional cultural references to things within this field. I could at a glance say, okay, compile all the research about this particular translation of this particular thing, and it'll do that quickly. So I use that for synthesis, for iteration, for expansive analysis on things. I do use some AI support to help to accelerate certain administrative tasks and operations. But where I don't use AI is on my personal communications and messaging and the skill of my own craft and the kind of the tooling of my own craft and human connection.
And that's such an honest answer, and I really appreciate it. So, one last question on this section is, if someone handed you like back 10 hours every week, 10 hours that currently being eaten by the back end of the business, what you are actually going to do with that time?
10 hours a week, I would write. I would think, yes, yeah, I would. I mean, right now, I think writing is very important for various different reasons. One, I'm capturing the odyssey of what my experience has been, you know, through this entire arc of service and facilitation, but also for professional credibility and really anchoring down as a leading voice for the psychedelic ecosystem from a ceremonial perspective. For me, that is really important. And quite often, if you're not published or you have certain types of benchmark thresholds, certain, you know, letters at the end of your name, there's certain things that just inherently, due to our culture, provide a different level of access. So that's something that I think I would invest time in creatively into writing and developing out the rest of that book. Mhm.
Wow, I love that. And honestly, that answer says everything about why you do this work.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
okay, I have like a last two questions.
Okay.
So you have been through a lot of version of yourself, as I've already mentioned that you are a festival producer, the man in the dark, the apprentice, the founder, the father. And if you could sit across, like from the version of you in 2020, right in the middle of collapse, before the ceremony, like before any of this, what would you say to him? What what did Aaron need to hear?
That's a great question. Oh man. Wow. I think, I'd have to say one of the most powerful things about this journey has been the humbling nature of it. You know, at 2020, or basically when I was doing the festivals, I felt so confident. I was on top of the world. I was selling out every event. It was reputation across the town of being a certain type of person that, gets things done and is super creative and visionary and all the things. But at the time, there were some very real things I was not attending to. That I was, controlling in relationships, judgmental of others. I was not open to criticism. I was very impatient with things getting done, and I had to end up going through some very humbling life experiences. Some from the nature of the work, working with such vulnerable, intimate, powerful people, and kind of continuously being in that. But some things from the dynamic of relationship with my wife, and she's changing and growing and exploring and becoming more dynamic and open, and things that I had to really make some powerful adjustments of being a dad. And so it's almost like I would have wanted to knock myself down a peg or two at the time, because I was so resistant to opening up to certain changes that, I got the whisper, I got the slap, and then I got the Mack truck several times until I had to be like, okay, I give up. I don't want to, control the circumstance. I'm open to changing. I'm open to learning. But along the path, it's been a lot of suffering. It hasn't been easy for, along the trail. And I think that's one thing that's important. Often the people that are in service are the ones that are often in pain. And that's been my path a lot too. I've experienced depression. I've experienced intense anxiety. I've needed my own facilitation as I'm facilitating others in this journey. And it's been a very humbling journey. And what I've come to at this point is that I am open. I am much less to think one thing or another. I see other people as like, wow, that's a soul on a journey. I don't think good or evil. I see maybe somewhat lost. I see somewhat whatever those things are, but it's really brought me down to a place of just seeing people as humans, as souls, and being willing to do my own work along the process. If something comes up, like, oh, I can't avoid that. That's something I'm going to attend to now before it gets really gnarly and takes me out like a steam train down the road. I'm going to attend to that now. And so that's something that I would want to tell young Ehren is, please be open, please be humble, because you've got some shit you got to learn still, buddy, although you think you're on top right now.
I'm not going to say anything for a second because that deserves space. Okay. So community sanctuary is open, right?
Yes.
This
Yes.
spark is growing. You are teaching, facilitating, mentoring. So what are you building towards? When you think about what this all look like in 5 years, what's the version of this that really lights you up?
Yeah, I am looking toward establishing true sanctuary. There are so many places and so many things in our life that is completely disrupted right now. You look at the social political frontier, absolute disruption, hot mess, environmental. A lot of people are losing that sense of how can we gather together in harmony, in peace, in discovery, in learning, in healing, in growth. And for me, what my wife and I are developing is a true ecosystem where you can come and explore and experience numerous different paths of holistic wellness and well-being, the beauty of nature, sound and frequency. I mean, we've got beautiful audio, acoustic, musicality wrapped through everything, artistry everywhere, with a confluence of different teachers and facilitators and workshop presenters that are there, but really with the idea of becoming an epicenter of impact, authentic impact, where you can come, learn, grow, bring friends, bring community, and continue to ripple and satellite out all the different things you can really experience here at Communitas. A place that is consistent, that you know is reliable every time you come, that can become your space and sacred space for you. And it's hard to say. The momentum, the growth in 5 years has been so profound and transformative, as well as our collective growth as to what's going on, what really is possible. But we perceive this as being hopefully a first note of many. We anchor in this tradition and space here, and then we kind of iterate and scale and develop out ally structures and really kind of networks of trusted allies, trusted collaborators, that we then become a greater collective, I feel like, of people that can then have greater service. So that's kind of where I see it so far. Some things online as well, asynchronous learning and people kind of training online, and then coming to our sanctuary as an epicenter of healing.
And I have to say that I love that vision. And you know that I believe it. And I genuinely believe it. So, okay, before I let you go, I just wanted to say something to you directly. Like,
Yes.
Ehren, you came in talking about festivals and left us talking about soul. From 100 million in a sold out stage, like to a single room, single person, and a single ceremony at a time. This is not a step down. That's a man who knows exactly why he's here. And thank you for your courage. What you're doing is really, really sacred. And to everyone who is listening, if this conversation stirred something in you, don't let it go. Share this episode with someone who is searching, because the work Ehren is doing deserves to be found. And you can connect with Ehren at thespark.co and find him on LinkedIn. If Communitas Sanctuary is calling you, trust that feeling. And we'll see you in the next episode.